Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Happy Palm Sunday. It's the week
You guys
before
doing
Easter.
good today? Yeah? Okay.
Good morning.
Yeah?
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
good morning. Yeah.
It has been so far.
Has been. I got up early. I'm not really an early bird, so this is like a big deal for me to get up early and keep it going.
You did it.
I did it. I
My
did
name's
it.
Pastor Bill Gross, and this is my wife.
Marcia Gross. Nice to meet you if I have not met you before. We've been around for a couple of years, quite a few years.
Yeah, and we got asked by Pastor Bill if we would go ahead and wrap up this study we've been doing on Song of Solomon. So we're going to do the 8th chapter, or at least part of the 8th chapter.
Right.
And the main focus that he wanted us to talk about was foundations of faithfulness. So just as Pastor Bill has been talking about kind of this, for the most, it's kind of a young love, because the thought here is that Solomon wrote this when he was a little bit younger. And then he kind of has some other parts in there that we want to build on how do you build a foundation so that you stay faithful, not just to each other, but to the really important things.
To God, that's for sure. Yeah, because for the first couple chapters all of them except for this chapter, it's a lot about young love and foundational love, and how this couple connected with each other and how they longed for each other. And so we wanted to start out with a little bit of our background. We met when I was 20. I had just moved from the Midwest to Southern California to be 20 in Southern California, and all that has to go with it. And I worked at a mall, a shopping mall, and Bill was the electrician at the mall. And
She worked at a store called Delicious Furniture. And for those of you old enough to remember, you might remember the furniture that was like the really heavy burnt pine. They would burn it, with so it'd be scored kind of black.
It kind of looked like the Flintstones, but
It did kind of look like the Flintstones.
It was big, heavy wood, but I could sell that stuff. I made some money doing that. I could sell it. I wouldn't have it, but I could do it.
And I noticed Marcia because she was hot. It's true.
And we used to go every Thursday night. There's a place called Comedy Magic Club, which still is out there, and all the comedians try their new acts and stuff. And so a bunch of people at the mall, we were all hanging out together, singles, and we'd go to Comedy Magic Club on Thursday nights, and it was always a big group.
It was always in a group at first, just because that's, how we started. And then after one of them, I thought, I think I'd like to go out with her. So I asked her out on a date to a movie. Very poor choice of movies on my part, I will say.
And dinner.
And equally poor choice.
So first dates are not always the best dates. We left the date, and I think both of us were looking at watches and kind of going, okay, well, that was fun. Okay, we did that.
It was an unremarkable date. And so we didn't go back out. But we would see each other there at the mall and say hi, and we were very polite, of course, with everything, but kind of not interested. And then, again, kind of this group night came along, and people, that worked there would say, hey, let's go to the Comedy Magic Club tonight. And Marcia said yes, and I said yes.
Yeah, and so we showed up, and nobody was there but us. And we're like...
Awkward.
It's like, okay, so we'll go and we'll listen to the show, and then we'll go home. But we started talking, and it was just like a light bulb went off. It was just like... And I remember even thinking, and I didn't really trust in the Lord at that time, but I was thinking, this must be a God thing, because we were just like, oh, this is so fun. We're having the best time. And we were just inseparable after that.
We went from unremarkable to inseparable. And I mean literally inseparable. Every day we spent with each other.
Yeah, so one night we said, okay, we're not going to hang out. And we talked on the phone for 3 hours. So there was no texting then. There were no cell phones. So to just continue with that, we got engaged in 6 weeks. And then we got married like 6 months later. So we said...
Whoa, I heard kind of groans in there.
So that we said if people come to us as pastors, we'd probably not recommend that, but we're 44, almost 45 years this year, so something stuck.
Yeah. We fell crazy in love, and we stayed crazy in love. It's something that we've held on to our whole life, is that crazy in love. So when we're talking about foundations of faithfulness, the first brick, kind of imagine a foundation as bricks.
Excuse me.
The first brick, that we would put in there is fall crazy in love and stay crazy in love. And if for some reason you slipped out of crazy in love, well, march yourselves right back there. Get back to that, because crazy in love is really kind of an important part of what God begins to build on. It starts with the two of you, but God kind of builds it from there.
Right. That, for any of you that are married or dating or whatever, just those first things that you found so wonderful about each other, and you just couldn't stand not to be with that person. Sometimes those things kind of fall apart, and life is busy, and it's like you got to find that crazy love that you originally found. And for us, it was really simple stuff. It wasn't big stuff. We didn't have a lot of money. We would just go on simple dates. We used to go to this park and take old bread, and I love animals, so we'd feed the ducks and talk about the ducks, and they'd chase me around and stuff. And we still go to parks and walk around, and just sometimes it's the simple stuff. You don't have to do big things just to remember who that person was and is.
It is. I was a part of a church then. I had gotten saved in kind of one church, which was a real kind of Jesus movement church, but wandered away from that after a couple of years. I think somebody asked me if I'd join this music group at another church. And so I went over to that and was a part of that when I met Marcia. And Marcia would come to that church service, very faithfully every single week.
I would. And then I walked out one day and we were walking out to the parking lot, and I looked at him and I said, "Do you get much out of this?"
And I responded, I don't know that you're supposed to.
You're just supposed to go. Yeah. And I was like, "Don't you think we should find some place that maybe you get something out of it?"
Yeah. I kind of look back on it now. Even when I was saying it, again, there's things that you say, and as you're saying them, you think, that doesn't sound right. But the whole, I don't know, are we supposed to get something out of church? Just didn't ring right. And, Marcia was like, yeah, if we're going to go to church, let's find one that we get something out of.
Yeah, so some friends of ours that Bill worked with invited us to this little church. And if you've seen the new, or it's not new anymore, the movie, The Jesus Revolution, this is kind of who we were. And it was this little Baptist church, allergies, little Baptist church, and there were about 15 people on one side, and they were really young, and 15 people on the other side that were really, really old. And there was literally the aisle, and that's kind of what was happening.
And we didn't really interact. We were a part of a church together, but 15 old, 15 young. But there was a pastor who he was just a great Bible teacher. And that's kind of where we fell in love with the Bible.
Right.
He would teach stuff, and they'd be like, okay, well, how do we do that? And we started to kind of pursue that side together. And
yeah, I had never been to a church where like Bill Rose teaches, and everybody, and it's like, it made sense. It was like God was just speaking. It's like, this makes sense to me. So yeah.
Maybe kind of a modification, or something that's got to merge to that fall crazy in love with each other, stay crazy in love with each other, is we felt crazy in love with Jesus. And we've stayed crazy in love with Jesus. And those two things, they come together to make the kind of bond that you need to kind of get just past us.
Right.
Because, us is not enough. It isn't. Without God, you've got to have that part in it. And we just fell crazy in love with Jesus and have kind of changed the trajectory.
Completely. It changed our life. We ended up going to a different church, and it was a big church, and just all the friends that we gained that are Christian friends. And, I know that's something that we really talk about, too, in marriage, is just your friends that are really going to help build you guys up and keep you straight.
And we went to our first small group there. That would be in 1983 or 2, something like that. And we've been in small groups ever since. Because that interaction with other Christians, with other people, especially for us as young marrieds, it helped us understand, okay, so how do I do this? How do I live as a young married husband? For Marcia, the same.
Yeah, they helped raise our children together, and we have 3 kids, and they are all married, and we have 8 grandkids. And it's just been fun to watch them. We actually have some in the second row today. 7
granddaughters, 1 grandson. He's kind of the prince. I don't want to wait. They love this little guy. They can't wait to get near him, and they all kind of mother him. And
yeah, and the church family has just been our family. for years, and it's cool to watch your kids grow up, and their church families are their families too. So yeah, it's really
So that first brick, the fall crazy in love, stay crazy in love, fall crazy in love with Jesus, stay crazy in love with Jesus. It is a real foundational part of faithfulness, because you not only have the love between the two of you, but you have the love individually, and then you practice it collectively with Jesus in your life. And it's a powerful combination. I think a critical one.
right, and you see that in the scriptures of the Song of Solomon too. It's like it's really, really. Oh, my pages are all messed up. How about that?
Yeah, Solomon, they said that, and this is actually in 1 Kings, that he wrote over 1,000 songs. And so some of what we kind of read throughout Scripture, and some of it actually in Song of Solomon, is like a song, that he's singing. And the belief is that he wrote this early on, and you have, kind of the bookends there, or he wrote Song of Solomon when he was younger, and he wrote Ecclesiastes when he was older. And you get to see the change in that. And some of what we've been going over in Song of Solomon, Pastor Bill Rose has done, I think, just a great job. There aren't many pastors that tackle Song of Solomon's on a Sunday morning. And so we got to hear about twin fawns and abs of marble, but the enduring part of that, right, is that abs turn into flabs.
And fawns fall. It happens.
It's the truth. He didn't write it there yet because he hadn't experienced that part, but they do.
It happens.
And so we want to kind of go to this bit here. We're going to just do the first part of chapter 8, to kind of to kind of get to the some of the things that he brings up that kind of give you the belief that faithfulness has to be a part of this relationship.
Absolutely.
So let me start. This is in chapter 8, verse 1. And he's speaking of the her, as she's referred to, the she in this. And she's saying, if only you were like a brother who was nursed at my mother's breasts. Then if I found you outside, I would kiss you, and no one would despise me. I would lead you and bring you into my mother's house, she who has taught me. So it might seem kind of weird that she's saying, I wish you were like a brother, because he's not. She has a whole different set of feelings, but kind of look at this as kind of like a dream sequence or like a wish, because they're not, from the language, it doesn't look like they're married yet, that they're together. And she's saying, I wish if you were like my brother, you'd be in the house all the time. I'd see you all the time. I'd be with you all the time. And nobody would think if it was weird if, I put my arm around you, and nobody would think it was weird if I kissed you like a brother. And so she's kind of in this yearning, this longing that she's talking about to be just around him.
To be, spend more time together, that they just didn't have as much time together. And she was just thinking, gosh, I wish you just lived here, with my family. That'd be really, and then she goes on to say, I'd give you spiced wine to drink, the nectar of my pomegranates. And I was like, there's been so many pomegranate references. It's like every week Bill tells us, it's like, and another pomegranate.
A lot about pomegranates.
A lot about pomegranates. And they must have really loved him. His arm was under my head, and his right arm embraces me. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. And to me, that second part, besides pomegranates, kind of funny. His left arm is under my head, and his right arm embraces me. And to me, that's just such a sweet, soft message. It's like, that's a snuggle, that she feels safe with him. This is somebody that adores her, and she really feels safe with him. And the daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. And I think Bill Rose spoke about this earlier, that don't fall in love, don't make that commitment until you're really ready to. If you're younger and you're here and it's like, I think I'm all in love and stuff, sometimes it's not the right time. You need to wait until it's really true love.
Yeah, kind of don't give up too much of that heart until it's ready.
Right, until God says, yeah, that's good.
So it's kind of moved from like, I wish you were like a brother, to I want the comfort and security of being around you. That's the whole thing. Then it kind of moves into another part where this is the guy here, and he says, under the apple tree I roused you, there your mother conceived you. There she who was in labor gave you birth. And now we've kind of moved into this kind of longing for not just the being together, but the growing together and the learning together. The apple tree throughout this book has really been a picture of wisdom, not just of gaining wisdom and of knowing what to do with that wisdom. And here he's kind of talking, they're talking together just about I want us to grow together. I want us to learn together. I want us to experience the world together.
Right, like young love does. I mean, you have all these visions and dreams, and it's like, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and, we're going to pray and see if God will do this for us. And that's just that anticipation. And they go on and they say, place me like a seal over your heart and a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death, its jealousy unyielding as the grave. It burns like a blazing fire, a mighty flame. And I looked up the information on the seal, and the seal was actually, forever ago, they used these seals, and they were little beads about 1 inch long with a hole in the center, and they're round and like a little cylinder, and they would carve on them, engrave on them their seals, so their name or their information or whatever they wanted on that seal. And, kind of like we do with an envelope, they'd put wet clay down, and they'd roll that bead in the clay, and it would mark it that was theirs. So what she's saying is, I want my seal on your heart, and I want my seal on your arm, and the heart is his love, and the arm represents all the things that he does, that she wants to be with him in all the things that
Heart
he does.
and action.
Yep.
In that. And then she kind of goes on, and she talks about this jealousy unyielding is the grave.
Yeah, which, and like we were talking, it's like jealousy for us, I think in general, when you hear jealousy, you think, that's not good. But jealousy is good in a love relationship, to where you trust that person, and you're jealous of, anybody else that would, try to enter that relationship. I was saying the seal nowadays is kind of like a wedding ring. That most people wear some type of wedding ring or wedding band or engagement. And the engagement ring means, that's mine. That's mine. And that jealousy is like, that's not yours. This is mine.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. When she's the one saying, I want you to place my seal on your heart and on your arm. So she's saying, I want it to be clear that you're mine. And there's an ownership that is not a coercive ownership. It's not abusive in the way of like, you need to do what I need you to do. It's a deep love that says, I want everybody to know that you are mine. I don't want anybody to get confused about that. And I think by the wearing of it, there's also and I don't want you to get confused about that either. I want you to realize that you are mine.
Yeah, don't forget. Yeah.
The jealousy is a good thing. God says that he's jealous. The Bible says we have a jealous God. And it's always in the context of Israel would go and align themselves with somebody else and pick up some set of customs that were not a part of the nation that God was building in them. They were a people that were God's people, and so he had plans for them, and he was working in them. We're going to get to that as a part of a marriage foundation.
Right.
But that jealousy was, he would say, don't go with them. Stay here. Do this. And that's a good jealousy.
It is a good jealousy. I think, and that it changes the thought of jealousy. It's like, wow, no, that's something that you really want to keep. Definitely.
In that, there's this, it's just not, again, for the ownership, because a good, strong, healthy marriage, they want to do good for each other. And they want to see good in each other. They want to care for each other. They want that care, to come back. And this, at this really human level, the way God designed us is to care for each other and to love for each other.
Right, to build each other up. I mean, I think one of the things we want to talk about too is just how you build each other up. You always see the best in each other.
Marcia's always encouraged me in who she thinks I am. Other people wanted me to stop being who I was sometimes, but Marcia was always like my biggest champion. I like to play guitar, and I've been doing that since I was in high school. And she bought me a guitar for my birthday. We we went to this guitar shop, and she was asking me all these questions about guitars. Do you like this guitar? Do you like this guitar? What do you like about this guitar? What do you like about this guitar? I had no idea that she was thinking about, I would like to get you one of these and give it to you because I like this about you.
Yeah, he visits his guitars. He has guitars upstairs, and he goes up there and he visits them. And
I do.
for a long time sometimes.
Sometimes for short times. But I always come down, and she goes, how was the visit? Were they happy to see you? It's like, yeah, of course they are. They're always happy to see me.
That's what he does.
So that's still crazy in love, okay? That's us being, part of that crazy in love that we have. But again, there's this, you have to be crazy in love with Jesus and stay crazy in love with Jesus. And there's a reason why. That's the second brick of faithfulness. This is going to sound like an odd phrase, but I'll give you the context for it. The second brick that for us has been there is that our deepest love is shown in helping the other person grow into God's design and plans for them. Let me say that again. Our deepest love is shown in being partners and helping how God has designed Marcia, the plans that God has for Marcia, and that a big part, I think, of my role as husband is to help her find that when she finds that, to support that. And the changes that we make over time really are really governed and directed by what we see God doing in each other's life, not by the things that we want.
Right, I know a couple of weeks ago, Bill, I think it was last week actually, Bill Rose mentioned the love languages and how you find out, just different things about your spouse and what makes them tick and what makes them not tick. And it's like to always try to keep those in mind when you're building them up. It's like, okay, how can I support that person in this, or how can I support them in that? And there's seasons. I mean, we've been through a lot of seasons, and it's like there's times where your life changes, for the good or for the bad, and sometimes you have to figure out, how do I build that person up during this season?
Sometimes you get that drift. We've had periods of time where one or both of us are so busy in kind of our own things, we're not spending enough time with each other. That's never been a good thing for us, to not get time with each other. And we kind of liken it to like, you got two wheels spinning like this, but they're spinning separate, and you run into those periods of time where as they're spinning, you start to come together, but all that happens is when you hit, you throw sparks, right? Because you're not in any kind of sync. You're just like, and then you start to chip at each other.
Right. And that's when we realize, okay, we got to start spending more time together. We got to start talking about stuff. There was a funny quote that I found, and it's from Ruth Graham, and she was married to Billy Graham, and Billy Graham was an evangelist. Probably most of you might know him, or had. And he would travel the world, and so he was always gone. And when he would come home, she was on this interview, and they said, so, he's probably a tough guy to live with. And she said, yeah, he is. And they said, have you ever considered divorce? And she said, divorce? No. Murder? Yes. And it was
that's the sparks.
So I'm not divorcing him, but sometimes. And you have to realize that when you hit those times, it's like, okay, reel back. What can we do? What did God plant in us at the beginning?
Yeah, the human side of this, the crazy in love with each other side of this, in that we kind of learned that whatever is bugging you in those seasons where your wheels are spinning and you're throwing sparks, don't make those an issue. Like, if that's an issue, put it on hold, and then we just start spending more time with each other. We'd make sure that we would go out and do things together, and we wouldn't talk about problems. And it's amazing how so many of those things that were bugging you, they don't bug you anymore.
Right.
Because you have other things that you've kind of worked in there that are helpful.
And again, that's where good friends come in. I mean, if you have really good Christian friends, they're going to build you up, and you can say, I need you to pray for me. We're having a hard time right now. We've said that to our friends, and, then they can help build you up and do fun stuff together with them, too.
So again, that's kind of the crazy in love with each other part. Let me bring the crazy in love with Jesus part into that. Because again, these two things, they come together, to make a real powerful bond. This is something we learned, early in our marriage. It was from a pastor in Southern California. He was kind of a big-name pastor in our denomination. His name was Pastor Jack Hayford. And when I kind of found him, he would talk about stuff I never heard anybody else talk about. So I was really drawn to that because it was like, nobody ever talks about this kind of stuff. And he gave this teaching, about this idea of God's created design. And it kind of started, I'll give it to you real quick. The first passage that he talked about was the one about God bringing a man and woman together in the book of Genesis. Genesis is still a picture for how we should be operating as people, and just in so many ways. And it's that one, you probably heard it, it's in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. The Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." And a lot of the teaching at the time was kind of this idea that a woman is there to help support a man, in his roles. And even back then, that was a big deal. But Pastor Jack said, that's not what that means at all. That's not what the word means. It's not about a woman being there to support a man or a man being there to direct a woman. It was a whole different picture that he gave.
Right, yeah, he was sharing about that, and this was the 80s at that point, and he would talk about how you weren't this, or you weren't this, and you weren't this, but these two people come together, and there's strength when they come together like this, because you lock together, and you hold together, and that's what God intended, is that we connect together, and we work together.
Yeah, the helper suitable it's the fit. It's God brings you together, so together you can fulfill his commission for humanity. And that's found in chapter 1. So this part in Genesis is not necessarily chronological. So this part in chapter 1 is what he said after he brought them together. And this is where the real power of this is. He said, God blessed them, and he said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number," which is tons of fun. "Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." And that idea of rule over, again, people misconstrue that as to have some kind of authority over, or we're directing, or we're the ones that should be in charge of things. And that's not what rule over means at all. In these passages, the ones that were written by Moses, we don't have that, what those words would mean, that early language that they were speaking. We don't have a lexicon for that. Like, nobody wrote that all down and passed it on what all these words mean. So the only way we find out, right, is, well, where else was that word used? And what this word means is that you help it grow into what God has created it to be. It's the same word that's used later on for how the moon interacts with the tides, to make the tides move. Way before they knew the science of that. That was written, and there was this partnership that was there. So the partnership is to help everything grow into its highest creative potential. And then he said, this is what blew my mind. Then he said, what if we did that in our marriages? How do you do that? That's amazing. And that became a big part of our life together.
Right, yeah, just how you connect that, and how, if it's, again, like the tide and the moon, if everything's in sync, it works well. It's when you get out of sync that it doesn't work well.
Yeah. So we find what God is doing in the other person's life. How has God designed Marcia? And then
Short.
Short and powerful. And that instead of changes being based on circumstances, or changes being based on what we might like or not like about each other, it's based on what we begin to grow in understanding through prayer and through time with each other and learning, and the Holy Spirit speaking to us. What does God want to do in this person's life?
Right. And I think that reflects back into the Song of Solomon, of just how they were learning about each other, how they connected.
The greatest things that Marcia has always brought is the encouragement to step into the things that God would have for us.
Yeah, we do crazy stuff.
We still do crazy stuff.
We've done it quite a few times, for
So
sure.
There's a third one now. Okay, so kind of hold on to those two, because all of these kind of work together. To me, without one of them, it's really hard to do the other two. So fall crazy in love, stay crazy in love. Fall crazy in love with Jesus. Stay crazy in love with Jesus. See that you're a part of why you're together. This part in it is to help see how God has designed the other person and help them grow in that. That's what we're growing into. The third is that trust is kind of the fuel that makes all of that happen. You have to trust in the Lord in order to be able to go through the changes in life that brings about.
Right, and trust in each other, you know, and you know, again, through the seasons, that looks different sometimes. You know, things in your life that you need to trust in what God is doing at that time. You know, so when you're young and you're dating and things, there's that trust factor that's my person, like, kind of like we talked about the seal. And then, you know, as you get busy in life and you're both working, and if you have family and things like that, there's a whole different trust that comes in there because you trust each other to provide, you know, to you know, if you're both working, to bring in money and to provide for your children and get your children where they have to be. There's a trust in God that no matter what you do, He's at the center of it.
There was, early on in our marriage, when I started to work for the church, the church that I went on staff with had 5 church services a weekend. Now, I was the worship leader, and so I was there for all 5 church services. But also, the staff culture was that we all had to be in the office while there were office hours. So Tuesday through Friday, I had to be at the church in the office from 9 o'clock till 5:30. And then a Friday night service, and then 4 more services that weekend.
It was busy. You were gone a lot.
I was gone a lot.
Yeah, and when he took the job at the church, he was an electrician before then, and we had a house, and we had a sports car, and the whole bit, and we had one child, I think, at that time. Yep. And Bill took this job at the church without asking how much they paid.
Sure.
And
Did not ask.
So we sold the house, we sold the sports car, we got a little Toyota, and we rented a little 850 square foot house with no dishwasher, 1 bathroom, and 2 kids. And we did it. We just did it. And we just did it. It's like because we felt called to do this.
We, one of the things from that time is, again, because we're working so many hours, and I just lost track of what was really important. And I came home one afternoon, and you know, one of the things I loved about Marcia was how much time she'd spend with our kids and just playing with them. And she was like a spiritual gift she has, I think, is to make life fun, you know, and help us all grow in that. And so she would spend time with, by then we had our second daughter, Caitlin. She was just a toddler at that point. And I came home from work, and I'm going to share this, but I got, like, don't shame me, okay? Because this is not good. I'm just warning you up front. I came home and walked in the door, and the house was messy. You know, the toys were out because she'd been playing with them, and they'd been playing. And I said, wow, the house is a mess. Couldn't you pick this up?
And what have you been doing all day?
Yeah, I might have added that part. That's true. And it's one of those, like, you know, you say something, and as you're saying it and the words are leaving, you wish you could grab it and pull it back, but you can't. And just the look on her face, you know, it really hurt her. And I could see that. And she worked so hard, like, for sometimes, like, I just got to pick everything up, you know. But it wasn't here's the difference in not knowing each other and seeing what God's doing in each other. She wasn't trying to pick it up because it was the right thing to do. She was trying to pick it up so I wouldn't be upset.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you have to think. It's like, okay, but that wasn't building me up, you know, and that wasn't, and you know, it's just people say things like that along the way. Sometimes we say things and we're like, but then say, I'm really sorry. That's a difference.
Said it.
You said it.
But you know what? It hurts when you do stuff like that. It hurts, and it's hard. You know, that's why that growing, you know, becomes so important. You know, I see the way that she interacts with people, and the way that she loves them, the way that she makes time for them, the way that she always made time for our children and was playing with them. And, you know, there's just a big part of their growing up. That's how God designed her. So I don't want to detract from that in any way. I want to support that.
Yeah, and that's how you learn about each other, too. It's just, you know, you figure out, like, what does make that person happy. What things, you know, if they have to visit their guitars, they have to visit them, you know. That's what they do.
So that third part about trust, you know, is not just the trust that we have with each other, but, you know, the biggest part, you know, this is remember fall crazy in love with Jesus, stay crazy in love with Jesus? I was telling you, sometimes crazy in love with Jesus, Jesus asks you to do crazy things. He asks you to do things that really stretch you and pull you into areas that you might not have seen coming.
No, absolutely. But the difference is when you feel the Lord speak to your heart and you just know that's what I'm supposed to do, and you tell your spouse, it's like, hey, I think, we've done that a couple times with planting a couple churches and moving cross country and selling stuff and buying stuff and doing all the stuff you do in life, but it's like, that's what you feel God's called you to do. And you have to trust that. Trust that sense and test it too. I think you can test it too.
Let's go ahead and hit that Proverbs.
Okay, let's move. The thing that part of the trust is in Proverbs chapter 3, it says, "My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you." And to me, that spoke, it's like, it's not just my son, it's to everybody. Do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart. If you have Jesus in your heart and you have the Spirit telling you what to do, that stays and that's there. You just got to tap into it sometimes. And this will prolong your life for many years and bring you peace and prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. So when the times are rough or sad things happen or bad things happen, that trust in the Lord is there.
You kind of look for it, don't you? Mm-hmm. It's like something bad's happened, and you're trying to make sense of it, and you're trying to make sense like of the circumstance and what it means to you, and kind of having that trust in God. You work into that. What is God going to do with this?
Right.
How's God going to turn this into what?
Absolutely.
There's a second part to that first 4 verses. And he kind of goes on and he writes, "Bind them," these commands that you've been taught, "bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart, then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man." That talks about a practice that they had back then where they would inscribe on something some value, something that they learned that is going to guide them in life. They'd write it, and then they'd stick it in like a little box, and they'd put it around their neck. So it would be like a physical reminder. It would be, underneath their tunic, and it would be against their chest, and they could feel that, and it would be this reminder of, this is a conviction. This is what I believe, and this is how I live my life.
Right, and it's there, and it was with them at all times, and people tattoo that on them now.
They get tattoos, yeah. But people ask me why I wear like these crazy rubber things on my wrist, and these are my reminders. That's why I have them. The red one is a reminder when I look down and I see it on my wrist. It's a reminder that I need to spend more time with God, because I always need to spend more time with God. There's not enough time with God. So not just the going over the needs and wants list, but just to get to know God. So this is my reminder, to get to know God more. The 3 that I have here, the first one is to pray for Marcia. And I look at this, the one that's lowest on my wrist, and it reminds me, stop and pray for Marcia right now. The second one is to pray for my children. And when I see it, I stop and I pray for my children. The third one is to pray for my grandchildren. And so when I see it, I pray for them all by name, all 8 of them. I pray for them. And just all that God is growing them up. They're so different. Each one is so different. They're amazing. And I pray for that, for God to emerge out of those personalities. And I usually have one other one. Today it's my blue one for Oasis.
His swag.
My swag. It's an Oasis swag, and it reminds me to pray for our church and for all of you and what God is doing in our church.
Yep, and we all have those things that help us remember God's faithfulness. Some people put Post-its on their mirror and, excuse me, or messages. I have the little verse on my phone that every day that pops up, and I try to read that first. It's like, read that before you do anything else. Just, so the reminders to trust God in everything and all his faithfulness. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." And to me, this is so important because sometimes stuff doesn't make sense. I mean, the world doesn't make sense. Life doesn't make sense. Things don't make sense sometimes. But as Christians, we have that trust in the Lord. And there's just that peace that comes with that.
Yeah, and kind of a tension, too.
Yeah.
Kind of when you read those, it's like the trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And isn't there some kind of tension in that sometimes? It's like, I don't know, but I think I need to run with this. But then there's this like, sometimes this nagging feeling inside. I think God's got something else.
Right, right, because he does. He always does. And it's like, but being aware of that, I think, is so, so important. Because sometimes we just get busy and we just run our lives and we, go to work or go to school or, live life or raise kids or whatever you're doing. It's like, but what does God have for me today?
Yeah, God has switched us up a number of times, in that trust and on that journey, that you go along with him. There's the second part of that says, in all your ways, so trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to or acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And so we've had big switch-ups. This kind of following God has been like a ride for us, from leaving my career as an electrician,
Right.
going on staff.
I've changed careers a couple times, and we've changed houses a whole bunch of times.
Yep.
Cars a whole bunch of times. But there's that trust that our paths will be straight. That even when we're doing something that's like, I don't know what's happening here, it's like we got to trust God and see where that path goes.
Yeah, he started us from that job as a worship leader. That church planted churches, and so we left to plant a church. And
They planted like one a year.
they planted one a year, sometimes 3 a year. The year that we went, it was 3,
Yeah.
I think. And we ended up going out starting this church with like 60 of our best friends. We had no idea how to lead a church at that time.
None.
But we had a bunch of people that were all trusting God together.
Right, right. And there was an excitement with that. It was like, this is what God's called us to do. We're going to do it. Let's do it. We'll figure it out.
Then 5 years into that, I'm upstairs in my office one day, and I'm praying. It's early in the morning, and I feel God say, okay, you're finished here. I've got someplace else for you to go. And I was like, what? Like that wasn't on the radar screen at all. That doesn't make any sense. We just started this church. We had just moved into a building, but like, how am I supposed to do that? So I took a couple of weeks on that one. It's like, this does not lean well into my own understanding, but I see this is what you want me to do. I just don't know how. And so a couple of weeks of praying, I go home and I tell Marcia, I think God's telling us we're done here.
And I said, I've been knowing that for months. I've been praying about it, and I knew it for months. It's like, time.
I don't know if it's that he speaks to her before me or she just hears it faster.
I'm kind of simple-minded, It's just, that's what it is. So, yeah. And I was like, where are we going to go? Long story, but we ended up in North Carolina. And here we are.
And everybody told us it was a bad idea. Everybody.
Oh, tell them the prophecy.
Yeah, loosely called a prophecy. Again, everybody, I'm a pastor in a denomination, and so as other pastors found out that I was going to leave California and move to North Carolina to start a church, they're like, North Carolina? Why would you go there? What's in North Carolina? Kind of the same stuff that's here.
People.
People. That's kind of, but there were only 2 people that encouraged me to go. One was my district supervisor, and the other was the pastor that had started Hope Chapel. And they both said, you'll do great there. You should go. But I was at this meeting. This is the prophecy thing. I was at this meeting, and this guy walks up to me. We're a Pentecostal church, and so we believe in prophecy and, all of the gifts. And he walks up and he says, I have a prophecy from the Lord for you. And I got excited. I love prophecies. Like, man, if God's got a prophecy, hit me. I want to hear it. And his prophecy was, thus saith the Lord, if you move to North Carolina, you will dry up, you'll shrivel up and dry up and blow away like fallen leaves and never be heard from again.
So there you go.
Yeah, amen. That was the whole prophet. And I thought, that sounds like a curse, not a prophecy. But the problem, this is what we tell people at the time, the problem is you could tell me you don't think this is a good idea, but that's not what we believe God's telling us.
No, it actually encouraged us more. Because, when you're just young and crazy and you're going to do silly stuff, and you hear that, you're like, I'll show you. I'll fix it.
Yeah, we didn't shrivel up and blow away.
We had some moments, but...
That's true, we did. So that trusting God part, when you put these together, right? So when you put together the fall crazy in love, stay crazy in love. With fall crazy in love with Jesus, stay crazy in love with with now a part of that being in love is to spot God's design in this person that you love and encourage that. Help them grow into who God has designed them to be. And like trusting God's the fuel for that, because there's sometimes you kind of look at it and you go, I don't know that this makes sense. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Right, right. There's that song that we sing, and it says, all my life you've been faithful. All my life you've been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I'll sing of the goodness of God. And that's so true. Because, you'll look back as you get older, and it's like, wow, God's been good. We've got a lot more ahead of us, I hope, but God's been good, and he's, been faithful.
And good, just that goodness of God. Sometimes you got to let that seep in. It doesn't always feel like God's been super good. And I get that. So if for any of you that have been here this morning,
Right.
and, I know these are kind of simple things. You might even look at them like, fall crazy in love, stay crazy in love. And I get that, because if that's not been the experience, then that might not, that's not going to land anywhere. But the one thing that we've learned in the trusting God part is God always restores it back to what his plan was. God will restore. And allow God to do that in you. Allow God, if you've drifted in the fall crazy in love with Jesus, stay crazy in love with Jesus. There really isn't, he doesn't have prerequisites for getting back to that, other than, I want that back.
Right.
And that's it. That's it, and he builds that in you.
Yeah, never give that up. So, people come and go, but God's still there. He's solid.
Can I pray for you?
Yes.
Jesus, I thank you so much just for what you've done with Marcia and I. I thank you that you helped us see each other, to fall in love and stay crazy in love. You brought us into a place where we would hear more about you and we'd fall crazy in love with you. You've helped us see the work that you're doing in each other's lives and given us the trust to follow in it. And I pray the same for my friends here. Lord, I pray any separation that's there just right now by your healing power, that you would show them that you have the ability and the desire to heal that and to make it crazy in love. Lord, I pray that we as a people help each other in that. I pray that friends are made here that support each other and always point each other in the right direction. And I thank you, Jesus, that the fuel for it all is that we can trust you. You did not set us in motion, wind us up, and let us go. But you are a part of every single second of our life, and I thank you that we can have confidence that following you, even if we end up kind of veering to the right or the left, that you're the one that makes our path straight. And we can have a confidence that you will put us back in the right path and hold us there and march it on. But I thank you for all these things and for your wonderful goodness in our lives. Amen.
Amen. And we want to also bring up, next week is Easter. So we have these little cards out front, and they have the services 8, 9:30, 11, and 12:30, and you can hand these to any of your friends if you want, or neighbors. And we ask that you register. There's a QR code on the back of the
Yeah, the back of your
thing.
chairs is a QR code. You can snap a picture of it. It'll take you right to the site.
Or go to the website and just register so they get an idea of how many people are coming to what services.
You might want to do that because it shows you how many people have already registered, like if we're at capacity, so you don't get here and it seems too crowded. I'll give you a clue. The 2 middle services are going to be the most crowded, so either get up early or sleep in and come to the last one, where there'll be plenty of space for you. Last thing, if you would like any prayer this morning, we have people in the back there from that corner over there. They're there to pray with you, so that if you have unfinished stuff that you'd like to pray about, you can go back there and pray with them. Thanks so much for letting us
Thank
share with you
you.
today. I
Happy
hope
Palm
you have a
Sunday.
great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.